Here are some important and condensed glossary and topics in Sufism. Abdal. Mystical figures in Sufism believed to maintain the world's spiritual balance through divine connection. Allahu. A meditative Sufi chant invoking the name of God to awaken divine presence in the heart. Anal Haq. Mansur al-Hallaj's bold declaration of divine unity, meaning, I am the truth. Anjuman-e Okavat. A Persian Sufi brotherhood emphasizing unity, love, and spiritual perfection. Ansar, Sudan. Followers of the Mahdi in Sudan, who fought for Islamic revival and resistance to colonialism. Arcs of Descent and Ascent, a Sufi concept tracing the soul's journey from divine origin to earthly life and back to God. A hidden treasure, the divine saying, I was a hidden treasure and I loved to be known, explaining creation's purpose. Akbarism, a school of thought inspired by Ibn Arabi, blending mysticism and universality, later embraced by Emperor Akbar. Ali Kianfar, a contemporary Sufi teacher known for bridging ancient mysticism with modern spirituality. The aims of the philosophers. Al-Ghazali's analysis of philosophy, reconciling rational thought with Islamic theology. The Alchemy of Happiness, Al-Ghazali's spiritual guide on aligning the soul with divine purpose for eternal happiness. Ba-Alawiyya, a Sufi order rooted in Yemen, focusing on piety, scholarship, and community service. Balibalan, a constructed language created by mystics to convey spiritual teachings. Baraka, the divine grace or spiritual blessing believed to flow through sacred people, actions, and objects. Baqa, the Sufi concept of abiding in God after annihilating the self, fana. Bai'ah, a pledge of allegiance to a spiritual guide in the Sufi tradition. Bihat Bibi, a revered female figure in Islamic mysticism, symbolizing devotion and piety. Bash Hezab, a Sufi ritual leader responsible for guiding collective dhikr sessions. Chilla, retreat, a spiritual seclusion undertaken by Sufis for intense meditation and prayer. Dara, a Sufi school or center for spiritual learning, particularly in West Africa. Dehat Bibi, a female mystic embodying rural spirituality and devotion. Dervish, a Sufi practitioner known for asceticism and devotion to God. Dhawk, the Sufi experience of tasting divine knowledge and presence directly. Dhikr, the repetition of divine names or phrases as a form of meditation and remembrance of God. 11 Naqshbandi Principles, a set of spiritual practices guiding followers of the Naqshbandi Sufi order. Fakir, a term for a Sufi ascetic who renounces material wealth to seek closeness to God. Fana, Sufism, the annihilation of the ego and self in the love and unity of God. Four Doors, a Sufi framework of spiritual development through Sharia, law, tariqa, path, hakika, truth, and marifa, knowledge. Ghafla, a state of heedlessness or forgetfulness of God in Sufi teachings. Hadra, a Sufi ceremony involving chanting, music, and movement to evoke divine presence. Hal, Sufism, a temporary spiritual state granted by God during mystical experiences. Hakika, the ultimate spiritual truth or reality in Sufi metaphysics. Hijab, Sufism, the veils that obscure direct perception of God, representing spiritual barriers. History of Sufism, the evolution of Islamic mysticism, blending ascetic practices and spiritual philosophy over centuries. Hizb Rateb, a Sufi litany recited collectively for blessings and spiritual strength. Hurufism, a mystical movement interpreting letters of the alphabet as symbols of divine mysteries. Ihsan, the perfection of worship, performing acts as if directly witnessing God. Image of God, the spiritual essence in humanity reflecting divine attributes in Islamic thought. Imamate and guardianship of Ali, the belief in Ali's divinely designated spiritual and political leadership. Inayati order, a modern Sufi order emphasizing universal spirituality and harmony among religions. Heshain, a term of respect for Sufi spiritual leaders in Central Asia. Ishq, divine love, a central theme in Sufi poetry and practice. Jaliyat al-Qadr, a mystical practice involving the invocation of divine names for spiritual clarity. Javan Mardi, the Persian ethos of spiritual chivalry, emphasizing justice, generosity, and courage. Kabir Edmund Helminski, a prominent Sufi teacher and translator, bringing Rumi's teachings to Western audiences. Kara David, a Sufi author known for his contributions to Ottoman spiritual literature. Kashf, the unveiling of divine truths in mystical experiences. Kashmiri Khwaja, a Sufi saint revered for his spiritual guidance and miracles in Kashmir. Qasr al-Asnam al-Jahiliyyah, the symbolic breaking of idols of ignorance in Sufi practice. Khatim al-Awliya, the seal of saints, a concept denoting the final and greatest saint in Islamic mysticism. Khidr, a mysterious figure in Islamic lore, symbolizing hidden knowledge and guidance. Kirqa, the ceremonial robe conferred upon a Sufi initiate by their spiritual master. Lataifi Sitta, the 6 subtle spiritual centers in the Sufi understanding of the self. Lazimi, obligatory practices or litanies in certain Sufi orders. Logos, Islam, the divine word or intellect, bridging creation and the creator. Marifa, mystical knowledge of God attained through inner realization in Sufism. Majzub, Sufism, a mystic overwhelmed by divine love, often appearing eccentric or detached from the world. Manba al-Ansab, a genealogical source tracing the lineage of Sufi saints. Maqam, Sufism, a spiritual station on the Sufi path toward divine closeness. Mast, Meher Baba, a state of spiritual intoxication or divine madness in Indian mysticism. Maulid, celebrations commemorating the birth of Prophet Muhammad. Mausim, seasonal or ceremonial gatherings in Sufi practice, often linked to pilgrimages or festivals. Menhuan, a Sufi order in China blending Islamic and local cultural traditions. Monsieur Ibrahim, a story highlighting Sufi wisdom through the life of a Turkish dervish in Paris. Monsieur Ibrahim and the Flowers of the Quran, a tale of mentorship and spiritual awakening rooted in Sufi teachings. Muqaddam, a representative or deputy in a Sufi order entrusted with spiritual leadership. Muqarrab, Sufism, those drawn near to God through devotion and sincerity. Muraqaba, a Sufi meditation practice focusing on self-awareness and divine presence. Murid, a spiritual disciple under the guidance of a Sufi master. Murshid, a Sufi spiritual guide offering instruction and mentorship to seekers. Mushahada, the witnessing of divine reality, a transformative Sufi experience. Na'at, poetic praise of Prophet Muhammad, expressing love and devotion. Nafs, the ego or lower self, which must be disciplined on the Sufi path. Nazar ilal Murd, a spiritual gaze that transmits divine blessings from master to disciple. Nur, Islam, divine light, representing God's presence and guidance in the world. Parvardigar, a title for God in Sufism, emphasizing the nurturing and sustaining aspect of divinity. Persecution of Sufis, historical and modern struggles faced by Sufis for their mystical beliefs and practices. Piro Murshid, the leader of a Sufi order, combining wisdom and spiritual authority. Pirzada, descendants of a Sufi master, often inheriting spiritual responsibilities. Qalb, the spiritual heart in Sufi metaphysics, central to divine connection. Qayyum, Sufism, a term denoting God's ever-sustaining presence and the saint who reflects it. Qutb, the spiritual pole or axis, the highest-ranking saint in Sufi hierarchy. Rabbani, Sufism, referring to the divine or godly nature of certain teachings or individuals. Rabi'a Basri, a legendary female Sufi saint known for her devotion and expressions of divine love. Raising hands in dua, a symbolic act of supplication and humility before God. Rida, Islam, contentment with God's will, a key virtue in Sufism. Rifa-e Ratib, a devotional Sufi ritual involving chanting and rhythmic movement. Rishi order, a Sufi-inspired mystical tradition rooted in Kashmir. Ruh, the soul or spirit in Islamic and Sufi cosmology, linking humanity to the divine. Ruzbihan Bakhli, a Persian mystic and poet, celebrated for his visionary insights into divine love. Salafi-Sufi relations, the complex interactions and theological debates between Salafism and Sufism. Salat al-Fatih, a powerful Sufi prayer invoking blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad. Salawat, sending blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad as an act of devotion. Salihiyya, a Sufi movement originating in Somalia, emphasizing simplicity and piety. Salik, a Sufi seeker on the spiritual path toward divine realization. Salimiyya, a mystical school blending speculative theology and Sufi insights. Salka, Sufism, the spiritual journey a seeker undertakes toward enlightenment. Sama, Sufism, a spiritual listening practice often involving music and poetry to achieve divine ecstasy. Saif al-Din Bakharzi, a Central Asian Sufi known for spreading Islam and mysticism in the region. Sayyid Mirak Shah Kashani, a prominent Kashmiri Sufi saint recognized for his teachings and miracles. Shab Barat, a night of forgiveness in Islamic tradition, often marked by prayer and reflection. Shath, ecstatic utterances by mystics expressing profound spiritual experiences. Sheikh, Sufism, a spiritual teacher and leader guiding disciples on the Sufi path. Silsila, a chain of spiritual transmission linking Sufi masters back to the Prophet Muhammad. Simia, the use of mystical symbols and practices to attain spiritual insight. Simthud Durar, a renowned Sufi text detailing spiritual practices and theology. The story of Nal and Damayanti in Bhakti and Sufism accounts, a comparative exploration of love and devotion in Hindu and Islamic mysticism. Sufi cosmology, the mystical understanding of the universe's creation and structure in Sufism. Sufi metaphysics, the study of ultimate reality, divine presence, and the human soul in Sufi thought. Sufi philosophy, a synthesis of Islamic teachings and mystical inquiry into the nature of existence. Sufi psychology, an exploration of the human soul and its journey toward purification and divine union. Sufi studies, the academic field examining the history, practices, and literature of Sufism. Sufi trail, a spiritual pilgrimage route connecting key sites of Sufi heritage. Sufi whirling, a meditative dance symbolizing the soul's union with God. Sufism reoriented sanctuary, a contemporary Sufi space blending modern design with spiritual purpose. Tajalli, the manifestation of divine light or attributes in the seeker's heart. Taqwa, a man's fear of God, a film exploring the struggles of a devout Muslim confronting modernity. Talib, a student in West African Islamic schools often connected to Sufi traditions. Tanura, dance, an Egyptian Sufi dance using colorful skirts to represent spiritual transcendence. Tanzil, the process of divine revelation, especially in relation to the Quran. Tariqa, a Sufi order or path leading to spiritual enlightenment. Tawajjuh, directing one's spiritual focus toward God or a Sufi master. Tawassul, seeking intercession through saints or the Prophet Muhammad. Tai al-Ard, the mystical concept of spiritual teleportation or miraculous travel. Tazkiyah, the purification of the soul, central to Sufi practice. The revival of the religious sciences. Al-Ghazali's magnum opus on balancing spirituality and Islamic law. Twiza, a communal gathering for spiritual and social solidarity in Sufi culture. Uwaisi, a spiritual connection to a master without physical contact through divine grace. Wajd, a state of ecstasy or rapture experienced during Sufi practices. Walaya, the spiritual guardianship and closeness to God in Sufi theology. Warid, Sufism, a divine inspiration or illumination granted to the seeker. Wasil, Sufism, the one who has attained union with God through devotion. Wazifa, prescribed prayers or litanies in Sufi practice. Wazifa Zarukiya, a specific litany within the Zarukiya Sufi order. Waziya, a lesser-known Sufi ritual focusing on collective spiritual growth. Wird, a daily spiritual recitation or practice undertaken by Sufi adherents. Yaqeen, certainty in faith, representing the pinnacle of spiritual conviction. Zahabiyya, a Sufi order renowned for its focus on inner purification. Zuya of Sidi Saadi, a revered Sufi center in North Africa dedicated to spiritual learning. Zawiya, institution, a Sufi lodge serving as a hub for worship, learning, and community. Zikar-e-Qalbi, the remembrance of God through silent, inward meditation of the heart. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel and other channels for some more unusual content. All the best, and have a fantastic day.